So now we kind of, at least theoretically, we know how to hold a baton now. Where's the next step? How do we get on that podium? How do we start the ensemble? And just what follows that? I can hold the baton, but what do I do with it?
Right, so we'll start with the foundation of you as a conductor, which is your posture and your stance. So, just like any athlete, just like any beginning musician, you need to have a solid foundation in how you approach your instrument, which is going to be from your posture. So, I'm a big fan of keeping your feet shoulder width apart. I'm not a big, I tend to stand with my feet together. But shoulder width apart is a good stance so that you can just feel grounded, that you can feel good connection to the ground beneath you and underneath your hips. And so I like to have a pretty tall posture. So feet on the ground, feet apart, ankles in line with your pelvis in line with your shoulders. I like having your sternum up, your shoulders back, and then as far as your arms go, I'm a big fan of extending your arms past your torso. Music is three-dimensional, it's not two-dimensional. Tempo and pulse is two-dimensional. So if your arms are locked into you, I call this kind of a T-Rex position, you are only communicating two-dimensional information, basically time and where you are in time. And when your arms are out and extended, you're actually able to utilize space in a three-dimensional fashion and be able to communicate musically in a three-dimensional fashion with your arms out. So I like having, standing nice and tall, shoulders back, not chest pushed out like Superman, but your sternum up, having your heart exposed to the ensemble, and having your arms out, and then your head just being in line with your shoulders, in line with your hips, so that you can have efficiency, and your body can be set at zero. I think it's really important that you understand how your body balances. That's how my body balances. And when your body's balanced, again, that's a place of minimal tension for you. So if you are hunching forward, you're putting unnecessary tension somewhere. If you're overextending, you're putting unnecessary tension somewhere else. And so for me, ergonomics and kinesthetics of how your body functions in space is something that's pretty important. Something that I don't think is talked about enough because we just don't have the time to really deep dive into it, which is part of the reason why I mentioned I wish I would have spent more time on fundamentals as an undergrad. And here I am trying to teach everything in 8 weeks, and and that's one of the things that I have to kind of skip over just a little bit, because you can teach someone how to stand, but you got to be able to stand and be able to have independence with your arms after that. So that's where to start a crash course. But standing up in a comfortable position, and putting your body in a position to have the least amount of tension is going to be the biggest thing. And that's something that you as an individual have to understand. I grew up playing sports and weightlifting competitively, and so I have a pretty good understanding of how my body functions and where tension exists within a certain position. The other day I was running and I felt my sternum tense up. And people, I thought I knew right away. Okay, so I'm leaching forward too much. I need to elevate my posture and just roll my shoulders back if I can, just a little bit, so I can kind of alleviate this tension in my sternum. And that's just what it means for me. And so I think one thing that I think undergrads kind of get shorted on that you get in a master's experience or in a lesson experience is the time to really break down your posture, how it works efficiently for you. And as an undergraduate, that's really difficult and challenging to do just because you are pulled to so many ways that it's one of the things that we choose to skip out on.
And I think that's a really good point for us to jump off a little bit, talking about that efficiency. So there are things that, if I always make the joke with our music ed majors that if we taught them everything they needed to know, they would be in school for about 200 years and they would never get a chance to actually go out and teach. So one of these things is trying to figure out where are these parallels in everything that we do. And I think that you call it the ergonomics, but understanding efficiency of how our bodies operate is so important in everything that we do, whether that's teaching, whether that's conducting, whether that's practice, whether that's performance. Everything centers on how we can eliminate as much tension as possible. So it's not just enough to be able to think about it from conducting perspective, but also from when you're sitting in the practice room, how do you eliminate all of that tension? Because the way that you're sitting is essentially going to be the way that you're standing. and all of those things that you do, then you have to think through, how am I going to teach that to my beginners? How am I going to teach that to that first year choir when they're coming in for the very first time? How are we going to talk about that? How do I put that into words? And Dr. Wimmer, I think you've done such a great job of being able to describe that. And everybody has to kind of figure out what that is for them and how they would describe it and how they would teach it. Because I think, you know, I'm foreshadowing one of our shows later on, but talking about it's great for us to be able to do this. Now we also have to think about, how are we going to teach this? How are we going to share this? And so you brought up some great points for those that are vocalists, for our listeners that are going to be choir directors. This same thing goes for your voice, is that you have to, and I would even go as far to say also our band directors, because one of the things that you're going to find out from the podium is how you communicate, how you stand, how you eliminate that tension is also going to affect your voice. And if you try and talk over, or if you try and talk too loudly or too forcefully, eventually your voice is going to go, because there's nothing like the way that you talk during a public school session. And so all of that is interrelated. So I just wanted to draw that connection.
Yeah, and before we move off of this topic, you know, some of the people that you think that would be the best beginning conductors, percussionists, they have the worst posture, because when you watch them perform, we are kind of taught to kind of hover over our instruments, which is the exact opposite of what you want to do as a conductor. You don't want to be hovering over the score. You want to elevate your body so that you can be presenting yourself to the ensemble. Wind players and vocalists have the best posture because they are in general taught to do that as they perform. You know, I had to kind of, you know, spend a lot of time, you know, when I'm playing percussion, I have to think, okay, so I'm no longer a conductor. I'm not going to play with my chest out and, you know, trying to making sure that, you know, I have good, you know, a good visual representation of where my chest is. I'm going to allow myself to collapse so that I can just, you know, go back to that muscle memory that I've trained myself to do. But sometimes when I'm a conductor, you know, I catch myself, oh, you know, I feel like when I conduct emotional music, I associate that with marimba playing, and my body automatically goes into, you know, if I'm playing the marimba, and that's something that I still have to kind of navigate and to kind of, you know, negotiate within myself, is, you know, not letting myself slip into those old habits of posture. So just one thing, you know, as an instrumentalist, those that are listening, how you perform, like Dr. Payne says, is how more than likely you're going to look when you're on the podium. So to acknowledge there's a difference between your primary instrument and your conducting instrument, and then there has to be a shift in approach to posture and just the physics of everything that you're doing as well too, the physical aspects of what you do.